Thanks everyone for joining us today for the West Coast series of the Morning Coffee Review. We brought along Kyle Davis today. Jason Artley was not able to make it. So we have one of our senior technical support specialists here, Kyle Davis, to talk about all things deployment, as well as some maybe top technical support questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We are going to be going over the topic, but also any questions along the way you have around Bluebeam as a whole. We can talk about those things. Even in review, we can jump over to there if you have any questions. This is all about you, the community. So we'll open it up for questions, but we'll start off with deployment. And if any questions come along the way, not just about deployment, but anything else, feel free to ask. So we'll get started here. We'll let Kyle kick it off. I'll let Kyle actually introduce himself instead of me talking about it. But Kyle.
All right, thanks, Michael. So yeah, taking the place of Jason today. Going to be hard to fill, but I like sitting in on them. But being on support, I do unfortunately sometimes have to miss some. So, but great for thanks for having me here. And we're going to get the screen share here. Let me make sure my comes up. All right. So I've been doing support for about 11 years now. And for most of that, I've been also doing the support for Autodesk products, CTC software, and also now for Bluebeam. Been doing that for probably 10 years for the Bluebeam side of it. It wasn't until later a little bit later in my career that I started the Bluebeam. So I've been using it, I think it was like review 2016 or even 2015 or whatever was before that kind of started using it. So, and on the support side of it, I've been doing the troubleshooting for, if there is issues with the installation, licensing, the deployments, been covering how to even go about it, consulting with clients on, hey, here's some best practices. So that's what kind of I want to show here a little bit. One of the biggest things is Bluebeam has very extensive guides on this sort of stuff. So highly recommend to go to their website, get these guides. They're amazingly detailed because there is two ways to do the deployments that they have. There's just the deploying of the EXE or the MSI and then editing the MSI. You can manually edit MSI and plug in the details that you want to deploy it, or you can use the deployment document and EXE file that comes with the review now. I think they actually started this in review 19, I believe, where they had the deployment EXE. Yep. It could have been 18, but I want to say it was 19. So.
Are you talking about the dashboard or the executable file that you were?
The actual executable file, because there's the Bluebeam Review Configuration Editor EXE, and this one I want to think it came out with 19. Again, it could have been 18, but all the versions do also have just the MSI in general that you can download, and then if you have MSI Editor program, you can go in there and start plugging in the information. So like right here, it's there's the where they talk about like the what values to do. Yep. So let me see if I can find, here it is, the MSI package. And
they're pretty far down. Yeah.
Yeah, the deployment process. This is talking about the editor. There we go. Right, so the review MSI properties table. So if you have the ability to go in there and edit the MSI, here's the information that you'll see in there. So like there's the Bluebeam serial number or the product in the product key. Do you want to turn on the auto update? Do you make it the default viewer?
I
put a shortcut on there.
Yeah, I had a question from a client the other day too that asked that same thing. Well, do the end users update or do we update for them? And that's a great way to decide right here, right? Mm-hmm. Auto update. Is it going to automatically update their version when a new update comes, if they're on active maintenance or not?
Yes, exactly. I mean, that was one that we get on the support side of things that, excuse me, that the IT or the managers didn't know ahead of time what they had available to them. So this would have been nice that during the installation or the deployment of it, that they could actually set these values ahead of time. If you don't set the value ahead of time, you have to manually then do it. And that's the thing about this one, which is manually doing it afterward requires that you actually go into your Windows registry. And if anyone is not comfortable in here, I do not recommend to do it. This is for basically, I would say for only IT that are very comfortable with it. But I can come in here to the Bluebeam, and then I think it's under here, right there. So under the H key local machine software, Bluebeam software 20, and then review, there is a disable in-app update. And then you can edit this registry to then either change it to a 1 or a 0. If I come back in here, enabled is 1, disabled is 0. So you can see in my registry that I changed it to a 0, but I can come back in here and put it into a 1, so that now if there is an update and I open my software, review is going to tell me there's an update. If it's a 0, you open review, it's not going to say a thing. So I would say that to keep this on for at least the admin, so that they know there's an update, and then that admin can then push that update to the end users. And I'll talk about that as well, because there is a procedure to deploy updates. And there is some command stuff too that we can do after installation.
What do you think is the recommended way? Having the end user update, or I guess what's the most efficient way? Pushing out an MSI? I guess it just comes down to what they decide, right?
Yeah, it's definitely based on the company standards. There are certain companies that are very strict on their installations or their end users. So if they do not have the ability to do installations, install software, then it's going to be a no. You want that disabled so that they don't get the notification, because then if the end user is like, hey, download, and then it fails.
Every time they open it up too.
Exactly.
Hey, it's now, ready for download.
Yeah. Well, there is an option for, remind me later, but then again, it'll pop up later. I do believe it's like you have to restart the computer, then that will show up again. But it's just like, yeah, you're going to get constantly annoyed by that. Hey, I can't install it, but I keep getting notified. So for those companies that restrict the end users, then I would say disable it. If you're not a massive company, you have 1 or 2 users and they can install, enabling is fine. There's not going to be any issues that we've seen with one person on one version, one person on another. The different versions and different updates work well with each other because of how the Bluebeam follows the PDF standards, across all their versions. It just one might have a different issue with something else than the other one. If there's a certain rendering or something like that.
Some kind of graphic issue.
Yep. Yeah, there was one that just came up recently that that they fixed the postscript issue. So if one person's on a previous update of review 20 and they get the postscripts, but yet the person who got updated doesn't, that's the only issue you're going to see there. So then as we kind of go through here again, there's a ton of these little fields that you can go in here and disable. So like even the welcome screen, this is like basically as soon as you open review, you never get the welcome screen. So it's right off the installation. You don't care to get the welcome, you can disable that as well. So it's pretty interesting to be able to do all that in here. When I first started working with Bluebeam deployments, this was required to do. You had to go MSI editor and put all this in there and deploy it. Then the next feature they came out with is the deployment tool. I don't know if it's further down. That's way down.
Yeah.
So they talked about all the fields first, and then they come down here to the bottom, and they talked about the deployment guide. but I know I'm scrolling through here fairly quickly, but just to give you other information is that they do give you settings in here to be able to use with other things. I know there was one in here I saw just a second ago about using SCCM. So you can use that to deploy your software as well. And so that gives you some of the information to come in here and like, there's the SCCM, there's a Microsoft group policy stuff. And then there's also this one here, which I've never heard of that one, but there is that one as well.
I like the UI that they give us for the new deployment versus any of the other MSI stuff. So
yeah, and then the whole OCR module. The deployment guide is definitely much better than doing installation scripts. I just find it, harder to do. These are just like, hey, you need to know your IT stuff pretty well for all this. But again, Bluebeam gives you all the information you need for this. And then we come down to the pre-installation stuff to come in here and then make sure you go through some of these certain things in here, getting the configuring of the your review preferences. So one of the things that we would definitely recommend when you're going to review or updating to newer versions is that you always install Bluebeam Review default on one computer. Then you come in there and you start customizing it to whatever you need. So my preferences are here, my tool chest are here, all those sort of things, your settings you want for your users, you set them up. Then you can do during the configuration of the deployment, you can then specify the settings that you've set. But even in the deployment exe file that I'm trying to find here,
there it is.
There was a clickable at the top. I should have clicked that and just been able to go to it. So this using the review configurator editor can help with this too, because then you can specify some of your settings as well in it. So this is why this deployment configurator is much easier to use. So what it is then I'm going to see, there should be a bookmark here for this. Yeah. So at the very top, you will have the review exe. But then once you go to this administrator, let's see if is this the link to the deployment? No, or was it down in this?
So on your right, you also have the way to navigate to this. Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. Yep. Yeah, that's what I was looking for, was in here.
I think you scroll down on that.
Yeah, so here we go. So this is the review compatibility. There's the information guide, and then the review deployment configurator, the MSI. I know there's a download for this somewhere, and am I missing it? It's been a little bit since I've been in here.
Yeah, I think if
this
you
page
using the MSI installer patch update, is that just clicking that new deployment right there?
Yeah, so this is just using this and then deployment using it. Even if I click this, it keeps jumping up and down.
Doesn't want you to bring you to an install of it.
I know it's here, and I'm just
You can move forward and I'll look for it. Yeah.
Okay, this might be it. I was thinking that was just the download for it, but this is the download of the deployment package itself. With the MSI. So when you download this, you're going to get that right there. So I have downloaded this before. Now this is the older one now. So I have a 20. So I would need to download the new one, which is the 20.2.40. But they haven't made any changes to the deployment portion of it. So when you extract that zip file, you're going to get all this information. And then there is the Bluebeam Review configuration editor. And it's just simply double click on it. And then you get the options here of, do you want to create a brand new deployment, update an existing deployment, deployment extensions such as the custom profiles, tool chest, and more, and then check licenses. This will take you to the license lookup page where you can, that's for users if they want to know currently what their licenses are and information. before you get into the other, other part of it, you can do that as well.
Kyle, quick question. So
Yes.
from David, does this apply to single user applications, or is this only needed for multi-user deployment?
Just this, like, so if you have just like one user you're trying to install this on?
Yeah, if you're just a solo person trying to install review, would you recommend still using this workflow?
Not for the deployment package. If it's just you, I would recommend just go to the Bluebeam's download page and download it from there. So just bluebeam.com/download. You'll click your little download here and then just manually install it. A single computer, this is pretty fine. The only reason even to use this is during the deployment of it for even a single computer. I guess you could then have it automatically bring in your tool chest and stuff for you, but I don't know how long it would take.
Second guess. So
yeah, I just don't know which one will be longer. To create the deployment using your tool chest, or install it and then bring in your tool chest after the installation.
Yeah, or your custom profile, right? Or your preferences, right. I guess, because you can still have those logged somewhere, because you're doing the same thing that you're doing with this, is just pointing to the location of it. So exactly. As long as you know where the location is, then it's not necessary to have this. I mean, if you're maybe doing 2, 3 that point to a specific extension location, I would recommend this. But if it's just a single install, just download it and then point to your own preferences.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it would take more time to go through the deployment configuration on one computer than it would be to just install and import your profiles and stuff pretty quickly. So
yeah, but it may be fun just to do this to learn about it. So either way.
Yeah, I've even done a deployment on my own computer just for fun too. So keep myself up to date on this stuff.
Exactly.
So if you happen to get more users, definitely look into this. And if you have a pre-knowledge of it, you're good to go ahead of time.
So. Exactly.
All right. So then basically in here, it's just, new deployment. And then you specify the MSI file. Where is it going to go? It always is, for some reason, mine's defaulting to my downloads folder, which is not even close to where I have it located. So I come in here and I grab that MSI. And then where's the deployment folder going to be? So I come in here and I have a deployment that I've set up. And this could be on your server that you can then set that's where it's going to be. Then you come in here and you plug in your serial number and product key, or you do have the option to say, hey, this is going to be a trial of it. So do you want to just push it to your users to try and then activate it later? So maybe go ahead and get it on everyone's computer and then activate it afterward, which will be one thing I can talk about with doing that update after installation.
Yeah, and also when you're buying multiple licenses, though, you're gonna have different serial numbers and product keys, right?
Right. So if you have different products, if one client purchased a standard CAD or an extreme, or any combination of that, they're going to be different serial numbers and product key for each one of those platforms. However, if you just simply purchased, hey, 7 seats of Bluebeam CAD, it should be the same serial number and product key. So it just depends on which one. And then if you're purchasing a brand new license, hey, I had 7 licenses, but I want to purchase new. Your sales rep should be able to combine it into the previous serial number so that it will just increase it by that number of seats rather than being a completely new serial number.
Okay.
If that does happen, however, we have had cases where we weren't aware of the serial number, or they was purchased through someone else, so they purchased it, and then afterward they're like, hey, can we just combine it instead of it being different serial number? The answer to that is yes. We will just have to work with Bluebeam, and they'll say, yep, we combined it. So
great. So basically, for that solution, if you want to combine all of your licenses into one, for one serial number, you will reach out to your rep, and then we'll go from there.
Exactly.
Great.
All right. So for this demonstration, I'm going to put in the use trial. And then we get to the delayed authentication. Just to give you information on that, is that when it's enabled, the end user opens review and saves a document. Then the the authentication of the licensing will try to be deployed to that user. So if you put in the serial number and product key, it's not going to register it at that exact moment of the installation. The end user has to do something, such as open and tries to save a document. Then it will run in the background to then authorize it. But if you uncheck this, then basically it registers it as it installs it. So you could then have an issue where then all of a sudden the computer didn't get used for quite a while, but yet it's registered on that computer. So that's why some companies will say delay it, because we don't know if they're going to use it within the week or 2 weeks. We don't know. So they'll delay it. But if you know for a fact, hey, I have 3 computers, they're going to use it right away, you can turn that off and they'll register right away. So the end user doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah, okay. So this would be a great way if you're expanding or something. You have a bunch of desktops or laptops you want to install review on, but you don't want to pull a license yet, right?
Correct. And then the other nice thing about this is, again, it'll be installed on everyone's computer, so they can at least open it and use it. And then, but if they, if your licenses, they will say get, overactivated. So you've installed it and, you had 5 licenses, you installed it on 7, and then, 5 licenses were registered, and then you try to do it in the 6th computer, it's going to say that you've reached your activation limit, but they would still have it installed. So then you can find like, oh, do we need to purchase another license, remove an old computer, or are they just going to use it as a viewer? It's at least there. So they have the option to do so. And then there's the set as default PDF viewer. So if you do happen to have multiple PDF viewers in there, you can say, hey, review is now the default, and remove the others as the default.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. And then in-app update, we were talking about that earlier. Do you want to be notified or not? But if this is turned on, everyone's going to get it. If you turn it off, no one's going to get it. So if you have one computer that you do want it to be on, if it's already installed on that computer before you do the deployment, leave it on. Otherwise, edit the registry and turn it off. So, and again, all those settings that were just kind of showed in that deployment with the manually editing the fields, you can see that a lot of them are already here. Yeah. So there was that welcome page right there. Review,
so
desktop, shortcut, everything
for you, right? It's just a toggle.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's editing all these fields ahead of time for you, so that you don't have to manually go in there with an editor and try to get those fields updated. It's all right here in your face, is what I say.
Yep. Right in front of you.
Yep. And then here's that review preference path. So you can say, hey, grab this, XML. As we talked about that earlier, of before you deploy, so that pre-deployment process, you can go in there and configure your MSI or your preferences to get that.
Yep.
So let's see, it was the compatibility administration guide. There was something in here about the pre-installations. Oh, that's post-installation. Plan your thing.
And while he's looking for it, in order to export out your preferences, you just go to preferences, and there's an import or an export feature at the bottom of the window that populates in review. So you go up to the review tab in review, and then there's a preferences area. And then from there, once you click on that, it'll bring open the import export at the bottom. Yep.
So what he was saying here, just to show that, review, preferences, or the keyboard shortcut, and then right there you can configure all your settings, and then simply say export, and then you can save out that MSI, not MSI, I keep saying MSI, XML.
We're in deployment.
Yes. What's also funny too is I have an MSI computer as well, so it's like my head keeps going to that. All right, so you browse to that preference file, and then default page sizes only apparently 2 in here.
Yeah, only in there. Yeah.
I don't know if you pick a preference, maybe this will change, but and then job options path, and then your net config path. So your net config path is the, if I go into the Bluebeam administrator, actually there's also in the preference now too, but
Yeah.
there is the global page setup, the email templates, the printer driver, all that in here.
And they changed this admin to also be some shown admin features in the reviews, so that, because if you don't have administrative rights, you can't get to this part in your computer. And that's why they also added it under the review. Not all of this, some of it, an admin part too.
Yeah, so under the preference, I know that there are some admins. I can come in here and there's the net config, and you got some of I got stamps and email templates. I don't have the other part, but it was just it made it a little bit easier, because when by default, if you don't have administrator rights, when you go to the Bluebeam administrator, it instantly pops up and says, enter your password, your admin password, or do you want to make have this make changes to your computer type of thing. Just because this is trying to elevate this to then be able to do something like change the settings, change the plugins. If you don't want your just a standard end user coming in here and just changing stuff, this is defaulted to run elevated. Okay. And then once we get that, then I go to the next page of then come in here and do you want to have the administrator listed? Digital signatures, edit text, export to Office. Do you want the product updates? Which is, from the help menu. Okay, I was going to say I knew this from last time, but then thought about it again. It's from the help menu. There is the option of checking for updates within here. You get the, or is actually I remember in.
No, it was there, but I didn't see it on yours. My help says check for updates below help. Yours doesn't say it.
I will say mine, I was probably playing with mine, and it's disabled in my registry.
You disabled yours.
I've again playing with settings, seeing how things work, and I change my computer and then forget to change it back.
So mine has it. It's below help usually. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was pretty sure I had it once before.
It's right there, right below help is where it shows it usually.
Now, so I have it disabled, so I'm just going to go on. I'm going to go back in the registry and get that changed. And then now the next one, redacted. However, this, as we, just to mention this is only available in Extreme. So if you don't have Bluebeam Extreme, that's going to be off in general.
Correct.
And then register license. Now this is different than that delayed authentication or anything like that. What this is that in the review menu, when I click here, I have the option to register or unregister. Is basically, do you want to disable that so that you don't even see it as an option? So that makes it easier for end users not to accidentally unregister or try to register. The admins have control over that. And then self-sign and translate markups. That's a fun one. I have to look into that one. I want to see if it's exactly what it says. So, get different other ones there. And then we get to the plugins. Here's all the available plugins. Do you want these? These are all the plugins that are available. It's not necessarily the ones that you have installed. But these are definitely ones that are available. For example, I don't have SketchUp Pro and I don't have SolidWorks installed, don't have Project Y installed, but it still shows up as an option in here. So you get to pick and choose which one you want to get rid of. In the Bluebeam Administrator, I kind of showed it just briefly. There is that plugins tab as well. And you can see what plugins in here. Now, in this list, this is only going to show you what you have installed in this location. So you don't have to go in there and, hey, do I need that? And even if you didn't have installed, this only shows you installed. And then the last one is basically just reminding you, here's the deployment folder. Here's the, skipping the pending reboot. This one is that if the installer detects a pending reboot, enable this option to skip. So sometimes with installations, when you're running installations or silent installations, the MSI or the installation will see that they're a pending reboot because of a Windows update or something along those lines, and the installation won't go. It'll just stop. So then you're stuck without review. The computer has to be rebooted and then run the deployment again. This will detect that, and instead it will skip over it and do the installation anyway, and then you have to reboot after the installation. So it's kind of a nice feature to skip it. I dealing with Autodesk products as well. I've had that issue many times with Autodesk products. I go to install something and then it pops up and says that I have to reboot because of Windows Update. So, and then after this, you just simply say create, and it will then create the MSI file or that you can then deploy to the end users. So I don't know how long this will take. I can hit create and we can talk about other things, but because the one other one to mention was the ability to update a deployment. So if you've already created one, I can come in here and grab the MSP file and then modify it to say, here's an updated serial number that we have now, or here's some plugins that we don't need anymore, or things like that. I can come in here and modify it so that new computers automatically get the new settings, the correct settings. So you can keep your deployment up to date. And then the deployment of the extension. So this is where you can come in here and add your profiles, tool chests, and other things like that to there as well.
Yeah, because what the next one is tool sets.
Yeah, so profiles, tool sets, and more. Add custom profile or profiles you wish to deploy. Only one profile may be default. So I don't have I don't know if I exported my. I don't know if I exported my profile.
So for those of us that didn't know, review works off of profiles. That's the way the UI is displayed, not just the way the UI is displayed. It is also how your custom columns works and custom tool sets. So custom columns in your markups list, custom tool sets in your tool chest, and how things are displayed. So it kind of confused me because the BPX file should also host some tool sets as well, if you have relative, right? So include the dependencies there checked. So maybe if it's just a profile, and then they also had a secondary deployment, I think, for tool sets. That's why I was like, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, so
can you hit next without adding one? Okay, yeah.
No, actually I can.
Okay. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, so there it is.
And then this is just tool chests, hatch patterns, and line styles. Right. So even if you didn't want to deploy a profile, but you want to deploy tool chests, you have that.
Okay. And line styles and hatch patterns. That's cool.
Correct. Yep.
For those of us that didn't know, Review did an update where you can do custom line styles now, and it's a very easy. We did it yesterday in the East Coast, or CST, I guess, of Central Time morning coffee review. There's also an extensive blog that Jason Artley created on how to create custom line styles as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Very nice. I love the changing that, every now and then we're getting new stuff coming in, and even with it being updates as well. It's not a completely new review system. It's just like update. Hey, a new feature in that update.
Yeah, and that's a great thing, right? A client asked me the other day, well, when's 21 coming out? They're no longer year locked, so it's not 2021, it's 21. And whenever they do decide to come out to be, I guess, release 21, it's not going to be year locked. So it's not going to be in 2021 probably, but don't hold me to that. They do feature updates. So feature updates come with bug fixes and also upgrades or updates, right? Like I think the most recent one was not just patches, but like the leader arrow going from a text.
Mhm.
And there's actually yeah, I think you're going to it, right? The update center. And you can see the release notes. If you click the release notes back up there.
Oh, there it
Yeah.
is. I knew I saw it.
This shows you not just this release notes, I think it shows you
Yeah.
all of them. Yeah. So as you go through, see there's a plugin support now for additional latest versions of there. Keep going down. There's improved measurement tools. Okay, so that was the most recent one, was the improved
Yeah,
measurement
point
tools,
two.
which is, yeah. And that was adding different measurements for your already used units. So you can now do independent. And again, that's a feature update. So it's not a whole version upgrade. It's the feature update within the version itself.
Mhm.
And you don't get these unless you're on active maintenance. So when you purchase your license, you own your license of review. But if you want the R&D that they're doing in between, you need to purchase maintenance, and you can stop and end it at any point if you wanted to. But if you restart it, you have to pay the difference to get to the latest version. You don't lose your license. That's one thing I love about Bluebeam. You don't lose your license if you're not paying the maintenance. Like some other softwares, if you stop paying your subscription costs, you give your license back. Review, you own it completely. You just decide on which version you want to be on.
Right. Yeah. So in also with those updates, as you know, for the most part, usually it's like here they change a number is usually when more things get added, like the quantity takeoff and scales. Those are usually when new features get added. Like here, 20, it was just fixes. Now 30, it did add a new feature, but it was simply just to work with the latest versions of Autodesk software, like
Okay.
AutoCAD, Revit, and Navisworks. And then 40 was the same thing. It's like, see what's fixed.
Yep.
So if there was a 0.3 that came out, you might see something like the 0.2 here where it'll say what's new, and then you might see new features.
Yeah, so that came out in March. And what was the other 0.1? When was 0.1?
So if I scroll down, yeah, 0.1 was in January.
January, so it's 3 months. So we're what? March, April, May, June, July. We're about 4 months in, and there's not a 0.1, a 0.3 yet.
Yep. Yeah, so if I go up to the point, yeah, the point and the 0.40 or 0.2, 0.40 was just released last month. So if there was going to be another one, it would be if there was some big issues, they will release maybe another sub under the 0.2. But if they say, hey, we also have fixes, but also new features, maybe they'll put it out sooner for that too. So it's all one of those that even with Autodesk and all that, we don't know when they're going to release these and what they're going to include. So it's kind of nice to all of a sudden see it. And so, and it's also really nice when you see a feature that has been requested.
Yeah.
Show up.
Yeah, the
I know that one
scale
about the
was
leader.
huge.
Yeah.
The leader, yeah.
Yep, the leader was mine. I was like, I want this, and then boom, it's there. I'm like, there we go.
Yeah, because it was always just attached, right? And then sometimes you couldn't even do it from the text where you can, the text box, right click and add leader. But now you can add leader from anywhere. We were showing that yesterday.
Right.
So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
And remember, anyone listening in, you can ask any questions pertaining to Bluebeam. It doesn't have to be related to deployment. Our topic is just to cover and fill in time. So if you do have any questions related to Bluebeam as a whole, feel free to ask. This is about you all, the community. We're just going through and sharing some of our knowledge, while Kyle's extensive knowledge on deployment. So feel free to ask at any point. We can go off on a tangent.
So, and kind of one thing that this leads me into of this would be like there's the post installation. After you have deployed it, you can come in here and use the other things like the update the review preferences, in doing those other sort of things like that. And one of the, I don't know if it talks about in here in this post script or not. Let's see. Oh, they don't look like they show it in this location. Interesting. Not sure why they're not wouldn't be showing that here, but there is another big one that I where was it located? Don't remember if it's actually within review.
For what?
Actually, it might be in the administrator. That's what I'm thinking.
For which part?
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
So yes, this is the other post installation thing I wanted to refer to is in the Bluebeam administrator. When you go to help, there is this command line options. And I wanted to bring this up because this really helps with updating review after the fact. If you wanted to come in here and update certain things like reinstalls the Bluebeam printer driver, uninstalls it, makes review the default editor. So if you went through and you did this deployment, but then you wanted to come back and update computers that already have it, you can run this command line options.
And I've seen you suggest sometimes to uninstall the printer driver. What happens, or what are some of the causes that you would suggest that to be?
So in the regards of the uninstall or reinstall, some of the reasons for that is when there are some of the printing issues that can pop up. One of them is that when you go to print and you don't get the save as dialog box, even though in the preferences you have it set to prompt you, for some reason it doesn't pop up, and therefore no PDF gets created. We say to reinstall the printer driver.
Okay.
That usually will take care of it. Every now and then, you do have to uninstall and then reinstall, because sometimes the reinstall, if you're not having certain permissions or whatever, or if it fails to find something. And this is the crazy thing right here when you're in the admin, if you right click on reinstall, you get the option to install and uninstall. So they're kind of a buried feature.
I remember you pointed that out to me one time. Yeah.
I laughed the first time I saw that. I was like, they're like, uninstall the driver. I'm like, where? I hit uninstall. There it is.
Right click, but where?
Yep. Right. And then I had to read the documents, or I don't know if I created a support case with Bluebeam, and they said, oh yeah, you right click on reinstall. Oh, okay. So yeah, so that would be the option, but also again, the command one, you can say, hey, there's multiple computers having that issue. You can just simply command script this to those users and uninstall it and then reinstall it. So,
Great.
And then there's other ones in here of resetting the settings. This has been one that on support side is probably the #1 solution to many cases within review. If you're having issues within review and it just doesn't seem to be functioning properly, reset settings solves probably about 90% of them.
Okay. But reset settings is going to reset everything. So be aware of that. I would always recommend doing a backup just in case. So there's the backups postscript there too as well. So just be aware. And you can do that from review. There's buttons in there that you can do the
right. Yep. When you either within
here.
review, preferences, and then admin, and then there's a backup, and then there's also reset. And then afterward, you can then restore your settings. The only thing on this of the backup and restore, if for some reason one of the settings that it does back up is the bad one, there is a possibility restore brings it back. I've done a few of them where we do a backup, reset, and restore, no issue, no pops up. So it could be just that, for some reason, something else that resets, there's other settings that may not be included in the backup that the reset takes care of, and it's not, affecting your tool chest or profiles or anything like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I usually would just say keep a backup, because what if you didn't save your tool sets out properly or something like
Mhm.
that, right? So backup would just be for you to restore it real quick to grab some things that you needed back and then reset again. So
Yep. Yeah, and there was one, actually, and speaking on the support side of this, that the reset settings took care of some issues with, and then there was another big one that I just had pop up, and it dealt with when you're in review and you go to open a PDF, it didn't matter what PDF it was, review would just lock up on you. Um, and doing some troubleshooting, we found that there was something in here that we had to come in, and if you had an NVIDIA card, a certain NVIDIA card, we had to come in here and change the rendering engine. Now I'm trying to remember where that was. Oh yeah, here. I think it was here. Yes, so under the advanced 2D rendering and 3D rendering, I think it was just 2D. Right here under the engine, we changed it to legacy, and all of a sudden, no more issue. So if you happen to have certain, I don't remember if it was certain NVIDIA cards. I'm trying to research into that one. The only information I got from Bluebeam so far was just NVIDIA. So, which I
so
have an
all
NVIDIA card.
cards? Yeah, I was gonna
No,
say, because so do I.
because I have an NVIDIA card and I've not had that issue.
Yeah.
But it could be certain models, which again, I'm trying to research to see which ones those are. But if you happen to ever notice that issue, come in here, go to advanced 2D rendering and switch this to legacy, and then try to open a PDF. And so far I am 3 for 3
Okay.
on that. So
Score.
exactly. There was only one, I guess I would say I'm, actually I may be 3 for 4, but one was not the exact same issue. So I don't really count that as an NVIDIA one. So
Okay.
So it's like I say I'm 3 for 3 because the other one wasn't quite the exact same issue. So I recommended it, but
And one question here too. So support related questions in terms of what we offer here at ATG. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Do you have to purchase the software? Do you have to have maintenance? How do we get access to someone like Kyle? We're having an issue. Something's wrong. Not a how-to, but something is wrong with our software.
yeah. So thanks for bringing that up, because I will say that that's one thing on the ATG side of things that we really like to, kind of trying to use the word here of pride ourselves on, but it's one of the things that we just really enjoy in our company here is our support side. So if you have any support related issues, contact us. We will help if you have any support issues. Sometimes even if you're not the reseller of record for ATG, we still want to try to assist in the regards to help you out as much as we possibly can. We will be limited on some regards. If it's dealing with licensing stuff, we may not be able to look up your licensing. So if you're like, hey, what's my serial number? We won't be able to look that up because Bluebeam only gives us access to the information we have sold. But if it's like general basic support issues, like, hey, my review is freezing when I'm opening a PDF, hey, contact us. We'll provide some kind of solution to you. We're always open for clients to come in, test us out, try us on it. We've been pretty good on the Bluebeam support here. We have multiple techs that can help you out. We have our databases of support cases in the past. One of the biggest things too, with just in global general of that, we have many cases that come in over the days, and we still have a 15-minute response time. So that's one thing that we try to get back to you as soon as possible. We see your case come in, we try to get to you.
And that's huge. 15 minutes, right? And 2 hours guaranteed. So instead of waiting, 2-3 days, maybe even a week to get a response time, when a project deadline's like today or submissions today, because that's when issues happen, right? When we're on that deadline and it's due today, you will get a response that same day within 2 hours, right? As long as we're in the time zone of us being at the office. So
Correct. I mean, we are 8 to 5 coast to coast. So if you are in the Eastern Coast, we have techs available. If you're in the West Coast, we have techs available until 5 p.m. Pacific time. So that when we say coast to coast, that's 8 o'clock Eastern to 5 o'clock Pacific. So we got a range there that we'll have someone at least get on your case. Now we're not guaranteeing a solution within that time frame. We're definitely guaranteeing a response that, hey, let's troubleshoot. We're either going to email you saying, hey, let's try a few things. When do you have time to do a screen share? Those sort of things to definitely get you resolved. Because that's one thing we really want to push is just getting your issue taken care of, because your business is important to us, that we want to make sure you're back up and running.
Yep. Great. That's great info. And like Kyle was saying, just to try us out, if you would like to go and try us out, I put the link to trying out our support here in the chat. So feel free to utilize that if you're not currently a client. If you are currently a partner with us here at ATG, you receive this as well. And is it, Kyle, let's say they are not using, or they are purchasing Bluebeam. Do they have to have maintenance to have this, or they just have to be reseller on record of us just purchasing the product through us?
So even if they don't have maintenance, we will still provide the support side of things. But if there's something like, hey, this was fixed in a newer version or whatever, like if you're in review 19 or review 18 and we're like, hey, this was fixed in a newer version, unfortunately at that point we would say you'd have to upgrade your license or get back on maintenance to then upgrade your license to the next version, that sort of thing. But we're still going to try. We're not going to just leave you hanging and say nope because you have no maintenance.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good.
So now, as
assured.
he was, yeah, exactly. Now, as Michael said there too, certain things on support, which just to make sure on that one, we troubleshoot support issues related to your licensing, the software not functioning as expected, those sort of things. We will do some how-tos if it's very basic, like, hey, how do I export a tool chest? You click here, you go here, you do this. Now, if you're like, hey, I really want to customize this to deploy it and do all this other stuff, how do you make these? Again, we might give you some recommendations, send some things over, but then we'd be happy to then schedule a call with someone like Michael or Jason to go over the more in depth of how to do that. That would be out on the tier 2 side, is what we say.
And we'd love to schedule that with you, give you a rundown, show you how things work, do some training, implementation around anything, again, Bluebeam as a whole.
Yeah, and actually with Michael, I will say, to give you a little credit, I actually had a couple of cases come through not too long ago that someone asked particular questions, and I sent them the YouTube videos for the a morning coffee review.
Great. Yeah, so again, these videos of how-tos are recorded in the morning coffee reviews, and also our resources pages for any of our YouTube stuff, because we do quick tips as well. So sometimes when we can't make a morning coffee review introduction of what we're going to talk about, we do quick tips, or we have blogs and also white papers on Bluebeam items as well.
Yeah, I've gotten a few cases that worked out very well, and then other ones where they say that, hey, they might want to schedule an actual one-on-one. So,
which is great. That's what we're here for, right? Or these morning coffee review sessions, you can come in and ask any questions you'd like as well. And hopefully within the time frame of not taking everybody's time, we can solve that issue as well.
Yep.
Well, great. We have 5 minutes here left. Does anyone have any more questions around, or any more? There hasn't been too many yet, around deployment, or any questions about review as a whole? Anything else you would like to add, Kyle, while we wait to see if there's any questions?
Just going over what I've seen, thinking about deployments, installation, there's just support in general. There's not too much else. I do want to, again, just make sure on the on the certain things is, I forgot the installing updates. for that, because I know that one thing about the updates, it's a little harder to do, is that if you already have it installed, I believe the deployment guide should help with this as well. Let me get back over here, because there are certain things like, for example, updating the review. The update itself might be smaller in size than the full deployment. So the update itself, let's see if I can find the post installation. There was, why can't I scroll down to that? There we go.
There is a question too, Kyle.
Mhm.
Do you want to answer that, or do you want to cover what you're doing? So you don't
Let's
lose
see. Is there a folder where IT can
So
copy over?
I'll read it out loud for other folks as well.
Okay.
Ed is asking, when you move users to a new computer, is there a folder where IT folks can just copy over to snag all of the settings and customizations for the user? So
Okay.
I'm guessing your customization settings, meaning your preferences, your profile, is there a folder that they can snag? So by default, is there a cache location for this? I'm guessing that'd be my question, where he doesn't have to say, hey, save these out for me. Does review cache them locally for those changes?
So it depends. It does depend on where you've set all your settings. So
And
like,
what
for
settings
example,
you've set.
exactly, like the preferences, the net config that we were talking about. It depends on where these are.
Mhm.
So like, for example, here in my stamps, it says, well, here's my stamps. They're located in this folder. This is, and if you notice here, this is in program data. So this is going to be common for all users who log into this particular computer, whereas the email templates are sitting in my local folder. So there are two different folders here that you would have to go to grab, the folder. And then the tool chests, if you have your certain tool sets, it depends on where these are coming from. Because if I come in here and go to modify, actually not modify, when I went to add one, where's the path? Is this going to a certain location? Is it going to, your user folder on the C drive, or is it going to a server? We need to know that information. And so it's not necessarily just one folder you can go grab that has everything in it. It's all depending on where that stuff is.
Yep.
Now there is like individual files. Can't remember if it's in on the C drive.
Yeah, and if you're trying to get like all of the tool sets, all the custom columns, I highly recommend just doing the profile and include dependencies export, so the .bpx, because that will roll it all into one singular.
Yes.
Per se, and then do your preferences second. That doesn't include stamps though, so be aware of that. If you wanted stamps, you still have to go to that stamps folder that Kyle was just showing. But I would do a profile first, export that out with the dependencies.
Yep. So that was that. When he selected this, there was a include dependencies right there. And the benefit of that, again, is it's going to include that dependencies. And then now there's like three things mainly you have to export. Your profiles, your stamps, and then the preferences.
Yep.
So for the most part, that's three things. And then you can import those over to other computers. Now, if it's like you're setting up one computer and then you're going to deploy it to other computers, that's the deployment configurator here. Because during the creation of it, you've specified, here's the preferences I want to use, here's the tools, the profiles, here's the tool sets, all that. And it's in the deployment. So when you're moving to a new computer, you deploy it, it's all there. Now, if you made adjustments to those and they didn't get saved back to this folder, then you have to come back in here and update the deployment to have those updates.
Yeah, point to the new whatever location folder file type you saved as.
Yeah, if you're like moving it to another, hey, you change servers, come in here and patch your deployment to point to that new location and stuff.
Yeah. Great question. We are at the top of the hour, or I guess top of the session hour. If there are no more questions, we will end our session for today. We appreciate everyone's time and thank you all for coming. There will be a survey below. By the way, once you leave the session, please rate us, let us know how we're doing, and what we'd like to see moving forward. And also, if you have any questions or what you're interested in, thank you for your time again, Kyle, today. Super informative, super helpful, and we enjoy always having you step in as well.
Yeah, anytime, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kyle. Thanks, everyone else. And we look forward to seeing you on our next session. Again, we always have morning coffee reviews at 8:30 CST every Tuesday. These West Coast ones happen every second Wednesday of every month. Feel free to register in the series. You don't have to keep registering for each time. It'll send you a reminder. If not, you'll have a video, or they'll always be posted on YouTube as well. So check out our YouTube channel on ATG's YouTube channel. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.